Good evening and welcome to Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Psi Epsilon Omega's virtual voter registration drive. My name is Sophia Jones and I am the chair for the Women and Criminal Justice Committee. We are so excited that you have decided to join us this evening, and we are equally excited to have the Honorable Aisha N. Braveboy, State's Attorney for Prince George's County, Maryland, as our guest speaker. The theme for this evening's event is Know Before You Go, Understanding Your Rights at the Polls. We have a very full agenda this evening, so Ms. Tiffany Crawford, Connection Committee Co-Chair for Psi Epsilon Omega, will review the agenda at this time.
Good evening, everyone. Just to walk you through a few key highlights of the agenda that we have for this evening. The welcome will continue forward next with Ms. Benita Swindell, that's the president of Psi Epsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Ms. Swindell will introduce our next speaker, who's Ms. Janice Washington, the chair of Maryland State Connection Committee for Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated. Following Ms. Washington speaking about Alpha Kappa Alpha voting initiatives associated with LEAD, Ms. Stephanie Magency will follow on, and Stephanie Magency is the chair of the Connection Committee for Psi Epsilon Omega of Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated. Stephanie will be introducing, of course, none other than our guest speaker, State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy. After State's Attorney speaks, at that point, we will be looking to hear directly from you all in the audience during our question and answer segment that will be facilitated by Ms. Rhonda Edwards, who is the co-chair of the Women in Criminal Justice Subcommittee of the Connection Committee for Psi Epsilon Omega and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, along with Ms. Katrina Dixon Patterson, that is also a member of the Connection Committee. That segment will be followed by just a deeper dive into knowing and understanding the rights that we all have to vote with a video that we have from When We All Vote by the rapper 2 Chainz. And directly following that, we will go through a segment where we virtually walk you through the process of registering to vote. So for any of those of you who are here that have not quite registered to vote, you're not quite sure how to do it, Mrs. Sheila Dedeaux is going to walk you through that process, and we will make sure that information or the link to the online form is available for you in the chat at that time. Moving forward from there, we will follow up with just another video because, of course, now you're registered to vote. We need to talk about your voting plans. So we'll talk a little bit more about the process for mail-in ballots and knowing all the things that you would want to do on the day of and to prepare yourself to vote. And then we will wrap up this session with an evaluation and closing remarks from Mrs. Jones. So Mrs. Jones, is there anything else we need to mention during the welcome?
No, thank you so much, Mrs. Crawford. Now, before we move on, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize the chair for the Connection Committee, Ms. Stephanie Magency, as well as my co-chair, Rhonda Edwards, for the Women in Criminal Justice Committee, as well as the entire Women in Criminal Justice Subcommittee. This event would not have been possible without assistance from Ms. Alvita Addison and Ms. Sheila Dedeaux, as well as our technology and social media committees. So thank you all so much for your assistance. So without further ado, I present to some and introduce to others the president of Psi Epsilon Omega chapter for Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Mrs. Benita Swindell.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Good evening, everyone. As president of Psi Epsilon Omega chapter, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, I bring you greetings. So grateful that you have joined us for our virtual voter registration drive. As you know, with the state of our nation, we're struggling to address a global health pandemic and a racial pandemic, which both have had and continue to have a disproportionate negative social and economic impact on our communities. With these challenging times, it's very imperative that we are armed and equipped with all tools necessary for this important election year. So enjoy the rest of your evening with us as we prepare you to know before you go, understanding your rights at the poll. Thank you. At this time, I would like to introduce our next speaker. It would be Janice Washington. She is the Maryland Connection Committee Chair of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She's a retired educator, civil rights, and political activist. She's a native of Dallas, Texas, and resides in Owings Mills, Maryland. She received her formal education in the Dallas Public Schools and graduated from the University of North Texas with a BA degree in government and a Master's of Teaching degree from Goucher College. At the age of 13 years old, she joined the NAACP and became a lifelong member, serving in many leadership roles as president of the Dallas NAACP Youth Council, organizer, and president of the North Texas State University NAACP College chapter. As a youth leader, Ms. Washington led the National NAACP Youth and College Division in a campaign to lower the voting age to 18 years old and to lobby the Congress to approve the 26th Amendment to the Constitution. She organized and participated in boycotts and demonstrations, protesting demonstration and segregation of public facilities. Ms. Washington was hired by Roy Wilkins, the NAACP executive director, to serve as regional youth director who traveled across the country organizing youth and college chapters of the NAACP. During her 27 years with the NAACP, Janice represented the NAACP at the United States Youth Council Western Alliance Conference in London, Belgium, and Holland. She served as the National Membership Director, Mid-Atlantic Regional Director, and the Assistant Director of Branch and Field Services. She's worked with civil rights icons such as Julian Bond, Jose Williams, Emmett Burns, and Ruby Hurley while living in Atlanta, Georgia. After leaving the NAACP, Janice served for 18 years as the campaign organizer and legislative aide to Delegate Emmett Burns of the 10th Legislative District, Baltimore County. She served for 18 years as a special educator, reading and English teacher for Baltimore County Public Schools. She's raised 2 young children after the death of her late husband, Moses Washington. Her son, Dr. Moses Washington, became a medical doctor and practiced at Memorial Medical in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Her daughter, Candace Washington, is a special education teacher at the Auburn School in Fairfax, Virginia. Let us welcome Ms. Washington.
Thank you.
Excuse me, right before Ms. Washington comes, can I get everyone to mute their phones or, yeah, just put your video on mute so that we can only hear the speaker. Thank you so much. Mrs. Washington.
Thank you very much, Sarah Benita. I was wondering whether or not you could see my image at this point. Something jumped on my computer, but anyway, you can hear me, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I want to thank Sarah, Stephanie, chairman of Psi Epsilon Omega chapter, for inviting me to join you in your effort to provide information and serve your community in helping to get people registered to vote, educated, and out to the polls to vote. I want to thank the chapter for what you've been doing over these last months in the work of advancing the status of our people, not only politically, but educationally, economically, and politically. We are very busy in the state of Maryland to try and encourage people to register, to educate people about the issues, as well as getting people out to vote. So I bring you greetings from our graduate and our undergraduate chapters across this great state. I was invited to share with you why voting matters. And when I was growing up in Dallas and got involved in the community work, my NAACP youth advisor told me at the young age of 13 that voting and politics affects you from the cradle to the grave. Decisions are made about your livelihood in your local community, in the state, in the nation that you live, how your life will be in your community, whether it's going to be a productive life or a life of poverty and less quality. And so that really had an impact on my thinking. And I used to go from door to door in Dallas, Texas, back in the day to collect poll tax when they charged poll tax for people to vote. And it was very, very concerning to me why people had to pay for a basic right to vote. So when we think about why voting matters, I think we have to just listen to some of the words that people have said over the years. For one thing, bad officials are elected by good citizens who don't vote. So did you hear me? Bad officials are elected by good citizens who don't vote. People who don't vote give up their power and their choice in determining who will best meet our needs. Susan B. Anthony said, someone struggled for the right to vote. Use it. And we know the history of voting rights in America and how people have had to struggle, die, and suffer just for the right to vote. So that impacts my thinking. I owe it to our ancestors for what they did in gaining the right to vote. And Coretta Scott King, the late Coretta Scott King once said, if American women would increase their voting turnout just by 10%, I think you would see an end to all the budget cuts and programs benefiting women. And I think that we have seen that in the past, how women have turned the corner in terms of how they have been able to impact the political process by virtue of the fact that we now have an African-American woman who is a candidate for vice president of the United States. So it's power, it's power. And if we don't vote, we don't have a say in how our lives are governed. So it does matter from the cradle, from the time that we are born to the time that we die, and how our lives are going to be in our local communities, in our states, and in our nation. We can say more on why it's important, but I think that it's the essence of our being. And ever since I turned 18, I've not missed an election to vote for the candidate that I want, who shares my values, my principles, who's going to support my needs, and who's going to help us move forward and improve our lives as citizens in the United States. Now, the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, it's a great sisterhood, it's a great organization, as we know, and it's a leader in our communities in trying to get our people involved in the political process. And under the direction, if I could see the slide, of AKA Leads, this will give you an idea of what we're doing in Alpha Kappa Alpha to get people involved. The International Connection Committee developed a voter engagement campaign that charges members, our sorority members and chapters, to implement comprehensive voter education, voter registration, and voter mobilization. It focuses on strengthening members' civic engagement to promote the sorority's legislative and social action agenda. Every year, at the beginning of the year, we organize our members to go to their state capitals and have an AKA day at the Capitol so we can share with our state representatives what our legislative agenda is, what we're concerned about, what we're interested in. And we talk to them, we call them, we send them letters, we hold rallies, we have marches, we make sure that our voices are heard on not only on the local level, but on the state level concerning issues in Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority that we are concerned about. During our conferences, we correspond to our membership in the International Connection Committee to help implement our current campaign slogan, AKA's LEAD. And the acronym LEAD stands for Learn, Empower, Advocate, and Decide. That's the essence of our campaign, to learn about the issues, to empower our people, to advocate for our people, and to go to the polls to make a decision on the candidates who will represent our people. We ensure that our communities are educated, and we mobilize our people not only to register, but to vote. We look at the candidates. We don't endorse candidates. We are nonpartisan. But we help our communities to evaluate the positions and stances that our candidates take, and whether or not we agree with them or disagree with them. That will help determine our vote. So it's important that we hold candidate forums, so we are from all parties, so we can hear about the issues and the positions that the candidates take. And we do this from the local school board in our communities, to our city councils, to our county councils, to the state legislature, and to our federal government. We make this kind of outreach in order for our people to be involved and aware, to protect themselves from the cradle to the grave. We try to engage our students. Once they become 16 in Maryland, they can register. They can't vote until they're 18, but they can register. So we start trying to reach them early. And when I was in college and working with the NAACP, that was a #1 issue of lowering the voting age to 18. During that time, young people were called off to war to fight in the Vietnam War. And they were 18 and maybe younger. They could go to war. The decisions were made about them to go to war, but they could not vote if they were 18 at the time. And so we campaigned to lower the voting age, and it was eventually passed. And so young people have the right as a result of many of our actions. So we try to engage our high school and our college students as well to get to vote. We try to provide them with materials and resources like how to register, where to register, when to register, and how to vote even when you are away. They need to know their documents. They need to know what it takes in order to register in their local communities. As I indicated before, we present candidate forums. We get our members to host various social activities in order to get people excited and interested in voting. We use our social media to promote the campaign. And in this environment that we're living in now as a result of the COVID pandemic, we cannot do many in-person activities as we normally do. But we are really working the social media, using our technology. I think I've learned more within this short period of time about technology than any other time before, because we've had to rely on it to get our message across. And so we have provided materials for our chapters. One of the things that you might see on the screen is our AKA engagement calendar, September 14th through the 22nd. will be National Voter Registration Week. And we've asked our chapters, graduate and undergraduate chapters, to conduct various activities like host virtual voter registration campaigns like you're doing now, create candidate report cards so people will know how they're voting on certain issues. We asked them to help the community to share information about polling places and their locations. We've asked them to create and share statistics about voting in the community so we can target populations and groups who have lower voter turnout. And so all during September 14th through, actually it's going to run through the 22nd, we're going to be asking our chapters, we've asked our chapters to organize and to be out there encouraging people to get to the polls to vote. We're working and partnering with a national organization known as When We All Vote, led by Michelle Obama. And we have been texting people across the country through an Outvote app. Once I got the hang of the Outvote app, I've been able to text people, at least 5,000 people, with a message to register to vote. Of course, some of them are responsive positively, and then of course others respond negatively, but we are reaching numbers of people with the message to vote. So we have a week of action coming up, and we want everybody to be engaged and make sure that you are informing people about what to do, where to go, and how to get themselves registered to vote. If they can't vote in person, certainly we want to push the mail-in vote, because I found that that was quite easy during the primary. And, you know, I would be encouraged to support the mail-in vote all the time. However, there's so much going on in terms of voter suppression. We have to really guard that particular effort, the mail-in vote, and protect our vote. If we don't mail in our vote, then we need to vote early. If vote early is, and that is provided in the state of Maryland. I believe it starts October 26th through November 2nd. So, and I find voting early is more convenient for me. And so, but if you don't vote early, then by all means, make it a point to vote on November 3rd. Let people know, and let the people know that it may, they may end up standing in long lines. So it was one politician that says that if you're going to go to the polls on November 3rd, go there prepared to stay. Take your chairs, take your shoes, comfortable shoes, and take a picnic basket, but don't leave without voting. Don't let anybody, according to what President Obama said, steal your democracy. So we have a busy week coming up. Now, tomorrow, September 18th, if we could show that, we have provided a list of okay, here's the graphic for September 18th. Tomorrow, we want to recognize that as Black Voter Education Day. We want to reclaim our vote and remember all what has gone in the past to help gain the right to vote. The 1965 Voting Rights Act was a landmark piece of legislation that we struggled so hard to get. Of course, the courts have weakened it, but we are confident that with the right people elected, that we will gain the strength and the power of legislation to protect our vote. So tomorrow we want to promote Black voter education, and we're working with the NAACP to help reach out to Black voters across the country. There's going to be a training for volunteers on September 26, 27 with the NAACP. They have a mechanism called the VAN training, where they are able to identify people in the community, in districts who are not registered to vote, And that is another way in which people can get involved to help get them registered through that mechanism.
Sorry, Miss Washington, you have about 2 more minutes.
Okay, and I'll move along quickly. We have a 100-day countdown. We provided graphics for our chapters, and they will be sharing that with you. Now, the one thing that is important, we have a self-registration portal, AKA, and that's being shown on the screen. If you touch that portal and the words "we all vote" when we all .vote/AKA, that will open up where you can self-register yourself. So we want our chapters to circulate that widely. And then we have a listing of information of voting dates by state. And that's provided in order to let our chapters know when it's the deadline for all of the different important dates as it relates to voter registration and voting. So we have that provided. Now, the last thing I want to say is that census is important. It's affected by politics. And so September 30th is supposed to be the last date to fill out your form. So we want to encourage people all over the land to register because it means more money for our communities and more representation. And if you know people who have not filed their census forms, please encourage them to do that because it will affect our communities. I want to thank the Psi Epsilon Omega chapter again for the invitation. Thank the local chapter and Stephanie McGinsey and her committee for the work that you are doing to carry on the great legacy of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Without our leadership, our communities would be lost. So thank you again for all the work that you are doing.
Thank you, Ms. Washington, for your leadership and for sharing that important information about Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority's voter engagement activities. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for the evening, Aisha Braveboy, State's Attorney for Prince George's County. As State's Attorney, Ms. Braveboy is the top law enforcement officer in our county, responsible for the safety and security of over 900,000 citizens. Her motto for the office under her administration is, crime is personal, personal to the victim, personal to the community, and personal to the state's attorney's office. She's already ushering in significant changes in how individuals and cases are handled to ensure not only that justice is administered in Prince George's County, but that it is done fairly. She has done many, many things. I won't go into all of the details on her bio. It is a page or so long, and she's smiling. We are honored that you are here with us tonight, and we want to get straight to you so that you can share some very useful information with us. I did want to point out for all of you that we are anxious to have your questions. You'll see at the bottom of the screen a button labeled chat. Please feel free to start entering your questions now so that we can get to them later. I'd like to present to you all, and again, thank you for joining us, Ms. Aisha Braveboy, State's Attorney for Prince George's County.
Thank you, Dr. McGinsey, for that awesome introduction. I really appreciate being here with the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm also a member of the Divine Nine, excuse me. I'm a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. So I have to say our sisterhood, our partnerships, you know, we are doing it. We are women and we're making it happen regardless of our colors. We have one mission and purpose. And I really appreciate the history that I learned from Sister Washington tonight. So thank you so much. And to, now I know you referred to her as president, but I know that we say Basilis. I think you all do too. So Basilis Swindell and Chair Jones, thank you so much for this awesome invitation. So we're going to start the presentation. We can, it's entitled Understanding Your Rights at the Polls. So we can go to the next slide. There are two ways to vote. You can vote by mail or in person. So any registered voter may vote by mail by using a mail-in ballot. You do not need a reason to vote by mail. If you want to vote, you can ask and request a ballot, and you will receive one, and you can vote by mail. If you don't know whether or not you are registered to vote, there's a website at the bottom here on the Board of Elections website. It's entitled Voter Services. You can go to Voter Services and you can look up your name to determine whether or not you're registered to vote. And if you're not, let's look the slide. You can actually request to registration now. The deadline. Oh, sorry, and I'll get into how you would request to register a little later. But if you're requesting a mail-in ballot, you can request it online at that same Voter Services website. You can also ask for a ballot by texting VBM, or in Spanish, VPC, to 777-88. Or you could fill out paperwork, a paper form, and return it to the Board of Elections if you want to do that. But deadlines for requesting a ballot, for just requesting it, is Tuesday, October 20th. Now, even though you have until Tuesday, October 20th to request a ballot, I suggest you request it as soon as possible, because unfortunately, and not to get political, but we all understand that there have been some concerns about folks getting mail. So if your mail has been a little slower like mine, you may want to go ahead and request your mail-in ballot as soon as possible. Next slide. So another question, of course, is whether or not the Board of Elections actually received that request. Well, again, you can go back to that same Voter Services website to determine whether or not your request for a mail-in ballot was received, and you will also learn of the status of your mail-in ballot. Next slide. You must mail or hand deliver your voted ballot. You cannot submit your voted ballot online by email or fax. We're not that advanced yet, so you must mail it. And you should use the envelope provided with your ballot. You must deliver it to your Board of Elections. You can hand deliver it if you want to. You can hand deliver it to your local Board of Elections by 8 p.m. on Election Day, or you can take it with you to an early voting center. And if you want to wait till Election Day, you can do that as well. A drop box will be at each of the polling places, and you can drop it in the box up until the polls close. If you mail your ballot, make sure that it's postmarked by Election Day, which is November 3rd. And your vote has to arrive at or be received by your local Board of Elections by November 13th in order for it to be counted. So again, with the mail being tricky, my suggestion is that you not only order your ballot as soon as possible, but you send it back in as soon as you get it. You mail it back in if you're going to mail it, or you can hand deliver it as well. Next slide. And again, you can drop your ballot off at a ballot box. The list of ballot drop-off boxes for the general election will be listed on the State Board of Elections website. Right now, I believe my staff checked earlier today, and those sites were not listed at that time. But as soon as they are listed, we hope to let everyone know. So I know that we are in touch with you all, so we can say, hey, you can go to the Board of Elections website now and see where you can drop off your ballot if you choose to do that. And I know some people are very concerned about the mail, and so they're going to opt to want to drop off their ballot. And if you have any questions specifically, of course, you can always contact your local Board of Elections or the State Board of Elections. Next slide. So you can vote. So at the early voting centers, you can start voting early, which I encourage everyone to do unless you're doing the mail-in, starting on Monday, October 26th through Monday, November 2nd. So that's considered early voting. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So you can go anytime during that time, either to drop off your ballot or to vote in person. And you can vote in any voting center in the county where you live. So that's important to know. So even if it's not the one that's closest to your home address, if it's anywhere in your county, you can actually vote there. Oftentimes people think, oh, well, it's going to be busy on the weekends. What we have found is that sometimes it's actually slower on the weekends. So the weekends actually is a pretty decent time to vote. And on election day, between 10 and 3 p.m. has typically been the slower times. However, with the COVID crisis, more people are home or working from home, so we're not sure if that's going to change how people vote or when they vote, but early is better. That's what I would say. Next slide. One of the things I wanted to mention, we are working on, and as I mentioned, look, we are all one sisterhood. So my office is actually partnering with the Board of Elections, and I know that you all know your SORA, Monica Roebuck. She is a huge supporter of voting rights for all. And so she reached out to my office, and I said, look, we will partner with you. We have asked the NAACP to be a partner. We've actually asked the Correctional Officers Association to work with us because we want to ensure that every individual who is eligible to vote has the opportunity to vote. And that includes those who are incarcerated in our local jail. So we have gotten a list of all of our inmates. We have ordered ballots. Those ballots, I think, arrive, we hope, tomorrow. And we will be doing a voter registration drive and also providing ballots to those who are incarcerated but want to exercise their right to vote. So we're really excited about that. And the other thing is that there are people who are who have felony convictions who are out in our community who have been released, but they believe that they can't vote because it used to be the law in Maryland that if you were a convicted felon, you could not vote. And so I remember being in the General Assembly, one of the first bills I put in was a bill that would have given ex-offenders or ex-felons voting rights. So at that time, let's say the legislature wasn't as progressive as they are now. So we did pass a bill. It wasn't my bill, but it was a more seasoned legislator's bill. It was my first year. So, but that bill allowed individuals who had completed their parole and probation periods to be able to register to vote. But then as of March 10th, 2016, if you have been, if you are a convicted felon, but you've completed your court-ordered sentence of imprisonment, so that means you are confined. Once you've completed that, then you are eligible to register to vote. So if anyone tells you, and they're walking around here among us, and they tell you that they can't vote because they've got a felony, you let them know as of March 10th, 2016, you're good. So we really hope that that message gets out to our returning citizen community. And I know that the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated will certainly reach out to all of our communities, including our returning citizens. Next slide. Oh, I guess that was it. But thank you all so much for this opportunity. I'm really so excited to work and partner with you all on the voting efforts and then other efforts in the future. And so if there's anything you think that we can work together on, it sounds like you have some great committees involving criminal justice, which is obviously very near and dear to me. I would love to work with you. I'd love to talk to you all about our legislative agenda to see if there are any ways that we can work together. I'm sure there'll be a lot of synergies. I believe some of your sources came and at least supported, I don't know if they were able to testify, our bill last year that made strangulation a first-degree felony assault. We really appreciate your support, because we know that that bill will save lives. And the other thing I'll mention, because I like to shamelessly promote all the wonderful AKs in my office, but I have two young ladies who I want to mention. Alana Gale, who is an assistant state's attorney. She's been an assistant state's attorney for a very long time. I won't say how many years, but very long time. She works with our reentry courts. She's amazing. And then I also, when I came in, I hired Tony Perry, and she runs our Back on Track program. And as you all probably know, Back on Track was actually started by your SOAR and VP candidate, Kamala Harris, when she was the district attorney in San Francisco. And it's a program that allows first-time felony drug offenders to enter into a really a rehabilitation program, so that they don't have to have a conviction at the end if they successfully complete the program. We're actually expanding it. So we're really excited about the expansion we're doing, and having someone like Tony Perry, who's very committed and innovative, has been wonderful. So again, just the sisterhood all around is wonderful. The women in my office are making it happen. And again, I appreciate our partnership. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, State's Attorney Very Boy. I'm Rhonda Edwards, and as a woman in criminal justice, myself, a practicing attorney, please tell Alana Gale that Rhonda Edwards said hello. I just have to say that. Anyway, but no, as a woman in criminal justice, the work that you do is near and dear to our hearts. As you know, that is the committee that is putting this on, as well as our voter registration committee. So we appreciate the work that you're doing, and we thank you so much for joining us tonight. I will say that I see some questions in the chat, and we are asking people to fill the chat with your questions for State's Attorney Brave Boy. Myself and Katrina Dixon Patterson plan to field the questions tonight. I'll start with a question, and then I'll let Katrina go ahead and get some of those questions from the chat going. But the first question we have for you is regarding housing. Understanding that permanent housing can pose a challenge to really full restitution of rights upon reentry. Are those unable to transition to permanent housing ineligible to vote?
So I don't believe that they would be ineligible. I think that, and I'm not an expert in this area, so honestly, I don't want to give you misinformation. Let me see if I have some information here. Hold on for a second. My team and I tried to ask some questions, so just give me one quick second. Okay. So if they have well, the answer is as long as they are in a residential setting with an address, they will be eligible. So I guess even if they're not necessarily, if they're long-term permanent housing, if there is an address that is associated with them, they would be eligible to vote.
Awesome. And Katrina, can you help us with some of the questions from the chat?
Sure. The first question that came in to State's Attorney Brave Boy: many are concerned about tampering with votes. I don't want to mail my ballot. Do you think it's safe to drop your ballot off at the box?
Yeah, those boxes are heavily guarded. They are secure. I have to tell you, we have a great board of elections. I mean, they have a thankless job. I couldn't do it because there's always something that goes wrong on election day. But I would say that we've never had a problem with the security of our ballot. So I believe that they would absolutely be secure.
Okay, Katrina, go ahead. I want to make sure I know we were running a little bit behind schedule, so I want to make sure that we have the questions from people who are here with us tonight answered.
Not a problem. Okay, the next question: how are seniors in nursing home facilities have the ability to vote?
So oftentimes they are definitely, at least obviously during the pandemic, voting by mail. And oftentimes they, we have also reached out to in the past, like the managers of their facilities to assist with ordering their ballots and filling them out, because some of them do need assistance with filling out their ballots. So generally that is coordinated with those who are who work for the facility. Sometimes individuals from the board go out to these facilities, but because of the pandemic, my belief is that there will be limited limitations for people going into these facilities. So, but generally we're able to coordinate with the managers at those facilities.
Understood. What advice can you give persons aiming to motivate family and friends that are so adamant that their vote won't count?
Yeah, so please do not listen to anyone, even those who may have a whole lot of power in a very prestigious position, that tell you that your votes will not be counted. Clearly, your votes will be counted. The concern that people have is that people will vote. So a surefire way for your vote not to count is for you not to vote. So I don't think that it makes any sense for you not to vote because you're concerned that your vote won't be counted. Because if you don't vote, it won't be counted. But generally speaking, there has been very little issue with voting by mail, early voting, and that even despite what some person might say, there's bipartisan support for voting by mail, early voting, expanding voting opportunities, because it works. And if you look at the pandemic, the primary that we had, this was one of the highest voter turnouts in a primary that we've had. I think probably the highest since Obama ran. Which tells you that people are, the first time, and so that tells you that people are voting and that those votes are actually counting. So I would encourage everyone to vote, and anyone who does tells you that your vote won't count and tries to discourage you are concerned about how you're going to vote.
Awesome. Where can a person get if they choose to mail or turn in their vote? What website can they go to request that ballot?
Okay, so I provided that. It's in the slides. The State Board of Election has a voter services website. And
while she's doing that, I will go to the next question. For our homeless populations and homeless programs, such as the McKinley Supportive Housing Programs, Transitional Housing, and other programs, are they able to vote in the county?
If they have a physical address in the county where they are associated with that home address, they can register to vote and order a ballot to that address.
Thank you so much. Will there be a voter protection program throughout the county?
Well, that's a good question. Generally, the voter protection programs, people will come out and monitor, the polling stations. My assumption is that the Board of Elections will allow for that level of engagement because it is our right and we must protect our right. I don't know how expansive it'll be, and I'm just being honest with you because of the pandemic that we're facing and people wanting to limit their exposure. But I can't imagine that the board would not allow poll watchers and folks like that. And candidates might also want people to be inside watching as they sometimes assign one person to do. But I don't know how expansive it'll be. But here in Maryland, I think, certainly it is a concern. But I think in many of our what's considered battleground states, I think that's where you're going to find a real need for poll watchers. So there are going to be people who will travel from Maryland to Pennsylvania or Virginia or even Florida to assist with voter protection, I know that back in 2008, I actually participated on the voter protection team for then candidate Obama, and I went down to South Carolina, but it was a great experience. But yeah, but like I think we need to make sure that we're protecting our vote everywhere. But I think generally in presidential years, because we're not having a lot of local contested races, there's not as much voter protection activity that goes on. But I believe that there will still be people out there monitoring the precincts.
Awesome. Also in the chat, there have been questions about how soon mail-in ballots will be counted. How soon after Election Day will the vote counts be finalized?
So there is a date. I know that all of the votes must be in by the 10th. So if you're mailing in your ballot, it must be received by the 10th. So when they usually, I know that early votes are, so if you're voting early, it's counted on Election Day. So I remembered in our, because this is the first time I think we did like a real mail-in ballot. A mail-in election was during the primary election, so it was a little different. But typically anyone who votes early, they count those votes on election night. So if your ballot is received by election day, it'll likely be counted that night. That's what I would say. But that there is an option on that voter services page to find out the status of your ballot, whether it was received and all of that stuff. But yeah, it typically gets counted on election night. And then they will count batches of other votes because they'll come in, each day after the election, because if people postmark their ballots on the 3rd, or even if they voted a few days before the 3rd, it may not be received that night, so that those won't be counted that night, but then they'll be counted when they start counting the next batch of votes that have come in.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Ms. Rhonda Edwards, as those are all of the questions in the chat right now.
Thank you.
Any additional ones, please put them in the chat.
Thank you. State's Attorney Braveboy, what is the process for the formerly incarcerated to regain their voting rights upon re-entry into society?
They just need to register. They just need to order a ballot. They register to vote. There is not a barrier for them to register or to be issued. It's not that they have to restore themselves as a voter, other than like any other voter who wants to vote for the first time. So it would be the same process.
Okay. And is restoration of voting rights, is that something that is discussed when inmates are transitioning to re-entry into society?
That's a good question. So we are working with our local Department of Corrections. So we don't actually control the Department of Corrections, but we do partner with them on a number of different initiatives. And so my understanding is that the local Department of Corrections knows that they can and should inform individuals leaving their jail who may be convicted for a felony of their rights. The other part of that is most people who are convicted of a felony are actually not held at the local county jail. Some are, because if their sentence is 18 months or less, they'll be held at the local county jail. If it's greater than 18 months, then they're held in state prison. So we don't have as many contacts, or as close, let's say, contacts as maybe we could or should have with the state prisons. And so when people are released, we don't necessarily know which institution they are being released from. But I believe it's something that we should all advocate for at the state level, to ensure that the state Department of Corrections is also informing inmates when they leave that they have the right to vote, or just hand them, a voter registration card and say, hey, take this, fill it out, mail it in. But that's something that I think is really important for us to do. And that's why we're spending a lot of time now with our local Department of Corrections to try to get it right so that we can be the model. I think we'll be the first in the state that really has implemented and embraced this idea of ensuring that every single person knows they have a right to vote, even those who have been in jail for a period of time. But I know that a lot of advocacy groups like the NAACP, like the ACLU and others, and organizations like yours, I think you guys are the voices in the community that really push this issue. But we need to do a better job with our government agencies informing people of their rights when they leave their period of incarceration.
Okay. And to your knowledge, is there a civics class or any mechanism in place for, people who are re-entering from prison or jail at this time?
I don't think there's anything that's uniform, to be honest with you. And that is something, and I'm so happy you raised that question. I think that's something that maybe we can work on together. Maybe that's another initiative that we can work on together.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you now, in the state of Maryland, what is the average number of inmates eligible for re-entry each year? If you have those,
I don't think I know that. Let me see if I have that in my notes. I don't know if I have that question. Let's see. So it looks like there are several thousand inmates that return every year, because as you can imagine, there are thousands of people in jail. They have different sentences, and but we are projected to have around 800 individuals return in 2020 to Prince George's County.
Awesome. Okay, so that's why it's very important, the work that you're doing, and we appreciate you being here tonight. I know that there was a previous comment about just working the polls and poll watching. In what scenarios would a formerly incarcerated person be prohibited from voting or registering to vote?
Well, I don't believe that they should be. So if they're having that problem, they should definitely contact the local NAACP. They can also contact their local board of elections or an election official, but the NAACP has a pretty sophisticated protect the vote initiative, so they could actually intervene on their behalf.
Okay, and so just for the public, what should a voter who believes they are wrongly being prevented from voting do if they encounter a problem with being allowed to vote at the polls?
They should be able to vote a provisional ballot. So even if there is a question of their eligibility, they will be given a provisional ballot, and then there will be a review of that provisional ballot by the Board of Elections at a later point to determine whether or not that ballot will be deemed valid, and that vote would be counted. But if there is a question about eligibility or anything like that, that individual can still request a provisional ballot.
Okay. And in Maryland, are voter suppression and voter intimidation crimes that may be prosecuted?
Well, it really depends on what it is. I mean, if it is physical intimidation where someone believes that they are being threatened, that could be considered an assault, and that is a criminal. That is something that can be charged criminally. If it is suppression of another form that may not have a specific criminal act attached to it, if that person is suppressing someone, let's say at a poll, standing in their way, something like that, and the local Board of Elections officials should be able to tell that person to leave. If they don't leave, then authorities would be contacted, because at that point they would be trespassing, and they would, obviously be handled potentially criminally, or the police may just try to resolve the situation without arrest. But they may provide their presence there to discourage that type of activity. But it really depends on what type of suppression there is. Now, I know that civilly, folks have been, and sometimes criminally, depending on what the behavior is, it is possible to either sue civilly or to prosecute criminally, but it would depend on the facts in that case.
Okay, all right. I see we have some more questions in the chat for you, so we
Okay.
can't let you go yet.
It's okay.
Katrina, would you mind, please, facilitating our chat?
No problem. What about undocumented persons? Can they still vote in Maryland?
No, I don't believe that. It's in some local elections, like some municipal elections, they have extended the franchise to vote in those municipal elections to people who are undocumented, but the state has not.
Okay. And can I take a ballot to my family member being held in a pretrial detention, or will he get one there?
He would get one there if he's held, especially in Prince George's County. I can tell you because we ordered those. But yeah, they should be able to get them, receive them right there at the jail. If they ordered one to the home, I'm assuming that the jail would make provision for them, maybe through their attorney, or if they're represented, by the public defender's office to get that to the individual. But I know at least in Prince George's County, we're trying to make it easier for the inmates to get their ballots.
Okay. And currently, does your office and the Department of Social Service, what are they doing to ensure that the foster care youth are being counted in the census and that those that are over 18 are also registered to vote? What type of programs are you all doing?
So, I don't really have a lot of, contact with foster children unless they're in the criminal justice system, to be honest with you. So the work that we do, I'm not in as much contact. So I know that the Department of Social Services, Department of Family Services, perhaps the Office of the County Executive or others may be working with them a little bit more directly. So I don't know that I could really speak, to what social services might be doing.
Okay. And other than wearing a candidate's paraphernalia, are there other things that are legitimate reasons to be turned away as a voter?
I actually think, well, unless you're just being belligerent and impacting others' abilities to vote, I don't really see why someone would be turned away. If they can't prove their residency, they may be asked to, go check with the Board of Elections. They may be referred to the Board of Elections to check if they're voting in the right area or right place. But again, those individuals can still request a provisional ballot. But there shouldn't really be any reason other than you've already voted. So if you're asked, have you voted before or have you voted already, and you say yes, they'll probably turn you away. But there's not a whole lot of reasons why you should be turned away.
All right. For our attendees, you can still continue to ask questions in the chat, and I will go back to Mrs. Edwards on her questions.
Okay, well, I think we're finished with our questions at this time, and we appreciate so much you taking the time out of your evening to join us tonight. So thank you again from Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. We appreciate
it. Thank you, ladies. And I'll be in touch because we've got some great initiatives that we'd love to work on with you all and a pretty robust legislative agenda. So we look forward to partnering with you.
There is actually one question that just came in the chat. One last one, I think.
All right. Can state inmates receive ballots?
I don't know how the state is implementing this, in state prison. I don't think so, because inmates, as far as I know, inmates who are convicted of felonies would not be eligible to vote if they're still serving a period of incarceration. There may be, and it's possible, because second-degree assault, which is a misdemeanor, does carry a sentence of up to 10 years. Typically, people don't get 10 years on the second-degree assault, but sometimes they get more than 18 months, and so they may be there. They may be eligible because they're not a convicted felon. So I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I'm sure that's a relatively small number, but nonetheless, anyone who is eligible should have the ability to vote. So that's something I'd have to check into and get back to you.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you so much, State's Attorney Brave Boy.
Thank you.
You have definitely given us a wealth of knowledge, and two nuggets that I picked up from you while you were speaking that I want to make sure I reiterate before we go into the next piece. Number one, the best way to make sure your vote doesn't count is what? Not to vote. So that was one. And then the second part of, just really, really realizing how fortunate we are, especially those of us who living within the state of Maryland, to that have been formerly incarcerated, to understand that, once you've completed your court-ordered sentence of imprisonment, your voting privileges have been restored. So thank you so much. I think that's great. And moving forward, and for those of you who are not in the state of Maryland that are also, just interested in understanding more about the rights of the formerly incarcerated to vote, this is a privilege that is given to multiple states. And I think the best way to make sure that information is delivered to you would definitely be by someone who is of the formerly incarcerated community and is now taking advantage of their right to vote. So without further ado, I'm introducing for you the Know Your Rights video starring 2 Chainz the Rapper.
What's up? It's your player partner checking in, 2 Chainz, and as you know or may not know, me as well as many peers, my age and where I'm from, have been either incarcerated maybe once or twice in our lifetime. And for those of you that have been through those unfortunate circumstances, I would like to notify you about some of the things and give you some real clarity about voting and your rights. So basically it just depends on what state you live in. Each state has different laws, obviously. If you live in Maine, Vermont, or DC, you never actually lose your rights to vote, even while being incarcerated. And in at least 20 states or something like that, you're allowed to vote after you do, pay your fines, your restitution, get off parole or probation or whatever. So really, it depends on where you live. It's free information. Just look it up. I really feel like this election matters more than any other election of our lifetime. I wanted to do my part to spread that information because I know, many people feel like their voice doesn't matter or their vote doesn't count or they don't even have the opportunity to do so. So I feel like me spreading this small message could hopefully reach somebody out there that don't think they have a chance and an opportunity to take this opportunity to vote November 3rd. Let's get it. So the first step with all of this stuff is check where you live, your state, see if you're eligible to vote. If you are, register. That's the very, very first step. Make sure you do that. And if you want to know any other information, make sure you check out whenweallvote.org/2chainz or text 56005. This should help you start the registration process. And man, remember, your voice does matter. We need everybody's voice at this particular moment. So I feel like collectively, if we come together during this time, we can get what we need to get done. I'm not here to try to sway you to vote for anybody particularly. Remember, go to whenweallvote.org/2chainz, the number 2, or you can text 56005. 2 Chainz, just a word from a player from College Park. Stay up, stay solid, stay true. What's up? It's your player partner.
Good evening, Source, and this is Sheila Dedeaux. Next, I'm going to walk you through a virtual voter registration. Next slide, please. So before we start, let's talk a little bit about the qualifications in the state of Maryland. First, you must be a U.S. citizen. You must be a Maryland resident, at least 18 years old by the time of the election, and able to communicate a desire to vote. You cannot have been convicted of buying or selling votes. And finally, if you have been issued a court-ordered sentence you must complete serving the sentence as well as any probation or parole before you're eligible. Next slide. So the URL on the screen will be entered into the chat. One link is for the online registration for the Board of Elections in Maryland. And the second link is a link that points you to a form that you can print, complete the registration form, and mail it back to the Board of Elections. And both the website and the form you can use to register to vote in Maryland. You can update your existing registration if you have changed your name, or you can change your party affiliation. Next slide. If you use the paper registration application, remember you have to use a black ink pen when completing the form. The form must be mailed to the Board of Election in the county that you reside, and postage is required. The form must have an original signature, so it cannot be faxed or emailed. So on the screen is a sample of the voter registration application. So let's walk through the application. So the form has multiple steps. Each step is information that must be populated. So step one, you will have the collection of your age and citizenship. So if you answer no to either question, that you are under the age of 16 and that you are not a US citizen, at that point, you have been determined as not being eligible to vote. Section 2 is where you would, the form is actually used for multiple purposes. So this form can be used to submit a brand new registration. You can change your name, your party affiliation, and your address. Step 3 is complete your name, and 4, gender, 5, date of birth. In 6A and B. So in 6A, you are to populate your Maryland driver's license. If you don't have a Maryland driver's license, then you can populate your MVA ID card number. If you don't have either of those, then enter the last 4 digits of your social security number in 6B. If you don't have an MVA card, a driver's license number, and don't know or do not have a social security number, then check the box in 6C. But you only check the box in 6C if you do not have information to populate in 6A or 6B. Step 7 is completing your physical address. So this is where you would populate your Maryland resident address. If you are a resident of Baltimore City, you would check the box in addition to entering your residential information. In step 8, you will complete your mailing address if it is different than the address in step 7, which is your physical address in the state of Maryland. So if you are a Maryland resident, but you have an address out of state, that's where you would put that information. Step 9, you will select your party affiliation. The form lists all of the parties that are recognized in the state of Maryland. Step 10, contact information. So this is where you would capture your daytime number and email address. Email address is optional. And step 11, check the first box if you need help with voting. So if you need assistance at the poll, either reading, writing, or filling out the ballot, you will check that box and it will be on file at the Board of Elections. And when you show up to the poll, they will have that indication already noted. In addition, in step 11, you can also check the box if you wish to serve as an election judge. In step 12, you will read the oath and sign and date your application. You would only advance to step A and B if you were previously registered to vote in another state or another jurisdiction. If you were, then you would fill out A and B and indicate the name in which you were registered under, as well as the address that you were registered under. That way, the Board of Elections can void the previous registration in the other jurisdiction. Next slide. So some deadlines to remember and additional information. Now, you are not officially registered to vote until you actually receive your voter registration card from the Board of Elections. If you've completed the registration process and you have not received your voter registration card in 3 weeks, then contact the Board of Elections. This year, the deadline to register to vote is October 13th. If you are using the online portal, you have until 9 p.m. to submit your applications. If you miss the October 13th deadline, you can still register to vote even on election day. However, don't risk it. Prior to election day, you can go to an early voting site and attempt to register to vote. You will need to provide proof of residency, so you can bring your Maryland driver's license or MVA ID, or a change of address card, as well as a paycheck stub, a bank statement, a utility bill, something that demonstrates you are residing in a Maryland residence. Next slide. Now for the online portal, we won't walk through all of the steps, but the same information is being collected just in a different order. One thing to mention on the online portal, you do have the ability to request a mail-in ballot on the online portal at the same time as registering to vote. So that's something to keep in mind. Next slide. So finally, for quick reference, the political parties recognized in the state of Maryland, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Bread and Roses Party, the Working Class Party, Libertarian Party, the Green Party, and unaffiliated. When you are registering to vote, if you do not select a party affiliation on your application, you will default to unaffiliated. Now, at this point, I'd be happy to take any questions. If not, I will turn it back over to the moderator.
Thank you, Mrs. Dido. I don't see any questions presently in the chat, so we'll just move this right along. So thank you to everybody that's taken advantage of the link for the online portal to register to vote. I hope the information that's been provided is useful to you. So let's just say now you're registered, because that's what we came here to do, right? So now you're registered to vote. Let's talk a little bit about the getting the ballot, the mail-in ballot. And of course, State's Attorney Brayboy talked about this. There are 3 ways you can text to 7788. You can get an online form, or you can submit a paper form request for a mail-in ballot. But again, I don't need to tell you all this information again. We can actually use someone else to give you more information on it, former First Lady Michelle Obama.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for all that you're doing to help everyone in this country make their voices heard in this year's election and in every election. Your work has never been more important. From the ongoing pandemic to the passion and protests we've seen for racial and social justice, it's clear that we're in the middle of a big moment in this country. And that means we need leadership that honestly reflects who we are and what we stand for. Our job between now and November is to make sure everyone we know understands that the power to make change rests on our ability to cast a vote. Fair and safe voting is going to be more important than ever this year. And that's why When We All Vote is fighting to expand vote by mail, in-person early voting, and online voter registration. Now, I'm going to be honest. We're really going to need your help to make these efforts a success. Luckily, the first step is an easy one. Just spread the word. Make sure your friends, families, and communities are registered, know their rights, and are fully prepared to vote by mail this year or vote early in person. So, go to whenweallvote.org to find out more and get yourselves, your families, and your friends ready to make their voices heard. Let's get more folks across the country trained with the tools, the resources, and the information they'll need to vote, because this election couldn't be more important. Hi, everyone.
Great. You have just heard our former First Lady, Michelle Obama, talk about When We All Vote. Your mere presence here.
Hi, everyone.
Your mere presence here tonight tells us that you recognize the importance of making your voices and your votes count. Before we close tonight, I want to thank you and our special guest, Ms. Janice Washington, Chair of the Maryland Connection Committee, and the Honorable Aisha Braveboy, State's Attorney for Prince George's County, Maryland. Thank you both for your participation in this workshop. The information you shared this evening was invaluable and much appreciated. Before you sign off, we would really appreciate your feedback. We have put a poll at the end of this presentation. If you would take a moment and please complete that poll before you sign off. Again, we would really, really appreciate it. Once again, thank you and have a good night.
We can still see you, sister.
Oh, geez.
You look so pretty.
Well, thank you, sister. So we still have people that are still signed on. If you are completing the poll, we appreciate it. And if not, we will bid you good night. The poll is just one question.
Is it possible you could get the other part off?
Off, no. Because then I come from the shop.
So you need the new one to.
Yep.
So we're still
okay.
on.
That's what I wanted to ask you. All right, thanks, man.
On mute, we would appreciate it and allow people the opportunity to complete their poll. And as you complete your poll, you can sign off. Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Oh.
And we'll end the poll now. And as Sophia said, thank you very much for joining us.